Peter King on the phone line right now. His Football Morning in America Monday column is must-read stuff, and he joins us back here on the show. How are you, PK?
Rich, the amazing thing about that is when you look at Washington, who obviously I don't know how many people expected them to basically be 2 games ahead in the loss column of Philadelphia right now. But the amazing thing about this is that, a lot of times you can look at a team's schedule and you can try to divine what the rest of the season is going to be like. Sometimes you can figure it out. Sometimes you can't. But, Washington's schedule is eminently manageable, particularly over the next 3 weeks. And I look at it and I basically say, this is not out of the realm of possibility in any way, shape, or form now that Washington, wins this division, or at least is very, very strong in this division down the stretch.
Yeah, and you can't, and certainly they've got a steady hand at quarterback and then running back. Adrian Peterson, Peter, nobody wanted him in the offseason, and he's been dynamite. He's been terrific. He's the old AP, the AD all day. He's running all day. It's unbelievable.
I think he was so intent and he was so angry. I talked to him, maybe 3 weeks ago. And he was so, you could just hear, he kind of keeps his anger bottled up. I've never heard him, really kind of cuss out anybody or anything, but he's like so many athletes. He uses the slights from anybody, the perceived slights, the real slights, to basically motivate him into what he does. And so I kind of look at them now and I say, this is real possible. You make the point about Alex Smith. Look, at some point the Chiefs said, Alex Smith has a limited ceiling, so we're going to draft Patrick Mahomes. And so they did. Worked out well for both teams, really. I think this trade did. And as I look at it right now, Alex Smith could really be the kind of quarterback. He could be 95% of Kirk Cousins. He could be 106% of Kirk Cousins. They're not really all that much different, except probably in the ability to throw deep down the field more accurately in Cousins' case. But I look at it now and I say this is definitely a contending team.
Peter King here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's take the other teams in that division one at a time right here, starting with the Cowboys. It certainly feels the way that the games ended in Houston on Sunday night a couple weeks ago, and then this game where just only 2 plays with 52 seconds and a timeout in their back pocket were able to be squeezed off for a 52-yard attempt with a 5-yard penalty that was as bizarre as they come. It just feels like this is the last chance, finally, for Jason Garrett in Jerry Jones's mind. How do you think it sits?
Well, I think sometimes we talk about Jason Garrett like he's the Marvin Lewis of the NFC, and I don't necessarily think that that's the case. If you're around the Dallas Cowboys and you see how they work together, and you see basically that Rod Marinelli is coaching this defense and putting up a really good representative product year after year, this is not I don't think it's automatic that Garrett goes. In other words, I think it is more likely than not that he goes if they go 6-10 or whatever. But, Rich, I would agree with you. The clock management in the last 2 weeks has been poor, period. He obviously should have gone for it last week instead of punted back to the Texans, and he should have gotten more than 6 yards out of the last 52 seconds or whatever it was. But having said all that, too, that was a horrible, horrible call. Tony Dungy said it on Football Night last night. I've watched it a bunch of times. I watched the J.P. LaDouceur press thing afterwards, and I did look it up. This guy has not had a penalty since 2014 on that snap. Why all of a sudden, when you snap the ball the same on every one, why do you get a penalty called on you at an absolutely vital moment of a game that just might decide this division?
Well, and look, I am a Jason Garrett defender, and you are right. I mean, look, the way that they have been playing on defense, I know Rod Marinelli coaches it, but this team is a cohesive unit, it does appear, and it does get better on at least one side of the ball. But there just seems to be clock management issues, and also just Dak Prescott has totally regressed. And whatever, ingenuity that we see in the home games, including that Jaguar game that was between Houston and Washington, it just seems that the same problems crop up when the games get toughest. And who else do you have to point the finger towards? Because it's not going to go towards the general manager. That's for sure. That's the only point that I'd like to make on that front, what you just said.
Rich, you're right. But just remember one thing. Just like Mike Brown with Marvin Lewis, the entire free world can think this is a bad coach. They got to get rid of Marvin. They got to do this. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks in the outside world, because Mike Brown really doesn't care. And I'm not saying Jerry doesn't care. He cares. He cares what people think about his team, no question. But this isn't like a lot of teams where the owner sticks his finger in the air, licks it, and sees which way the wind is blowing to see if he's going to keep his coach or not. Jerry Jones, is going to really have to be slapped in the face. This is a guy who kept the same coach through 3, 6, and 10 years, remember. And so I'm not convinced that this is it. I think, as I say, it's more likely than not, if they finish under 500, that this is it. But it's not a certainty.
Yeah, there's a bye, and then their next two games are on national television. Monday night at home against Tennessee, and then at Philadelphia on Sunday Night Football. So it's only going to get hotter, the seat, if there are no wins. And then Philadelphia, I know we could just chalk it up to hangover. That's what we usually do when a team doesn't play very well after winning the Super Bowl or play consistently. But what can you put a finger on with what's happened with Philadelphia as we're getting set to see them in London next week?
I think there's a couple of things. Number one, I think that Carson Wentz isn't being protected the way he was a year ago. The offensive line just seems to be leakier than it was a year ago, even with Peters back. I mean, that's number one. Number two, remember last year it was a running back by committee with a bunch of good backs. Now with Ajayi gone, I think that's hurtful. And then, I also think that this secondary should be better than it's played. I mean, Howie Roseman spent a lot of draft capital. I'll give you Sidney Jones in the 17 draft in the second round, tore his Achilles. He's a legitimate top 12 or 14 pick in that draft. He has not come back and played anywhere near, very top NFL corner level. So I think you're able to throw the ball down the field on them. And again, look, yesterday, the last touchdown, the Philadelphia Eagles usually don't get fooled on a simple play like that. When you're not watching for Greg Olsen to leak out from the line, from the 1 yard line, knowing that the Philadelphia Eagles can't really trust the power running game of the Panthers, maybe as much as they could have a few years ago when they were more of a power running team, say Tolbert and Williams. I mean, you got to be watching for Greg Olsen on that play, and they just let him go and go free.
Peter King here. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Peter King
here.
No,
I was just going to say that really kind of bugs me about the Eagles.
So when I see the Eagles, as I call the game with my NFL Game Day morning crew on Sunday in London against the Jaguars, who's the starting quarterback for Jacksonville, do you think, Peter?
Eli Manning.
Huh? I know that you're saying that they should pound the table. You're pounding the table for that Eli trade.
No, I mean, look. I would just say this, that my gut feeling, my gut feeling is they'll give Bortles another game because they don't really have much of an alternative. But Bortles' confidence has to be at its nadir right now because clearly when you hear Jalen Ramsey say, everybody knows what the problem is in here, we just can't say it. I mean, that's a dagger through the heart if I ever heard one. I mean, what do you do if you're Marone and Coughlin and you got Jalen Ramsey? I mean, do you say, we'll actually pay you an extra $1 million a year if you no comment everything the rest of the year. You know, I mean, it's just amazing what he's doing. But I I don't know. I guess I would start Bortles. And I mean, to me, the absolute killer for this team is not having Fournette to take over games. I'm not saying he'd take over a game against the Philadelphia front, but he would at least give you a fighting chance to be able to run the ball competently against Philly, which is going to be hard for Jacksonville. So I think it'll be Bortles, but I don't have any inside information on it, really.
And then in that game, the Texans really put it on Jacksonville. I mean, if you want to come out and say that was for all the AFC South to win that game on the road, to put the doubt into this team as deep as it could be at the quarterback position, was remarkable. Certainly in the fact, as Glazer reported during the pregame shows yesterday, that Deshaun Watson took a bus, and you put a lot more meat on the bones. I got Glaze here tomorrow. What type of bus was it? Was it like a regular? He bought a ticket and strolled on.
It was a tour. It was a tour bus. I talked to Watson yesterday. It was like a band tour bus. A smaller one. There were 6 people on it. There were 2 drivers, a security guy, one of the trainers, and then there was the director of sports performance, Luke Richardson, who kind of stretched and treated Watson along the way. They stopped at a Fleming's in Baton Rouge for dinner Friday night on the way there, and got into the hotel in Jacksonville at about 9:00 Saturday morning. And I asked the Texans this. Okay, it's convenient this week because they're home on Thursday night, and then he gets to rest for 10 days before they play Denver. And I asked about, Denver's a little bit farther. Denver's almost exactly 1,000 miles from Houston. But I guess the doctors have told them that it should certainly be healed by the time they go to Denver for him to fly there.
So he's not in the back row of a Greyhound leaning up against the window like Ratso Rizzo. Not everybody's talking at him, I mean, that's not what happened.
Wouldn't it be great if it was a bus trip like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
Yeah. You're going the wrong way,
You're going the wrong way. But, I doubt there was that much of a hardship because clearly he's got the ability to stretch out on a comfortable bed or whatever it was, and sleep if he wants to. And he's got all the video he can watch. He told me that he was watching TV and watching tape. So
did he take it back?
Probably like a lazy Friday night at home with a free dinner at Fleming's.
Did he take it back too?
Yes. Huh. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I wrote this morning, Rich, that if you read this column early, that Deshaun Watson is probably on a bus, on his bus somewhere in East Texas, a couple hours from getting home to Houston.
Oh, man. A few more minutes left here with Peter King. It's amazing, Peter, how things work with the Ravens and Bengals losses. The Steelers now lead the AFC North coming out of their bye week, taking on Cleveland. It's now time to throw the spotlight back on Le'Veon Bell with the trade deadline coming up next Tuesday. How do you see it all playing out here with Le'Veon, Peter?
Rich, I talked to 2 teams over the weekend that I thought might be interested in trading for Bell. But the biggest issue that they saw, both teams saw this, that let's say, for example, they could find some way reasonably to pry Le'Veon Bell loose, like trading a 3 and a 5, and he could be on the team the rest of the year. Well, it's clear that the agent and Bell want to maximize his contract in 2019. So there's no guarantee at all that he would just say at the end of this season, hey, Team X, let's make the best deal we can. They don't want to do that. They want to make the best deal they can with one of 32 teams or 31 teams, not with your team necessarily. So, let's say for the sake of argument that you can't get a contract done. Well, obviously you're going to franchise him and then, or transition him at least. And then you're in the exact same situation he was in this year. Is he even going to report to you? So you're almost it's so hard to trade for him, knowing that you might only have him on your team because you probably are not putting him in the lineup this week or next week. You might only have him on the team for like 7 games. So, I mean, it's all, I can't see the Steelers being able to trade him unless it's an absolute total dump job, like they trade him for a 3 or something like that. I can't see it.
And then they take on the Browns, and Hugh Jackson says he wants to take control of the offense more, that's his area of expertise. And this is the week that they go back to Todd Haley's old shop. I mean, how is that conversation going down with Todd Haley and Hugh Jackson for a team that's 2-4-1 right now, Peter?
Look, this is not like if you're a defensive coordinator and you go to work for Bill Belichick, let's say, even though he doesn't do it this way, you know that the guy who's your boss, who's your head coach, that's his area of expertise. So if he steps into your room, you just got to take it. I mean, whether Todd Haley likes it or not, Hugh Jackson has been an offensive coordinator. He's been a head coach in 2 places. And he's run offenses, in 3 different places. So I find it hard to believe that Todd Haley would stomp his feet and act childish if Hugh Jackson said, listen, I want to do more of X, Y, and Z, whatever that may be. And I bet he's going to do that. And Todd Haley is just going to have to take it. And he may not like it, but and again, you may hear, because I have no idea what his reaction would be. You might hear that he would be upset by it, but what do you expect to happen when you're slumping on offense and when your head coach has his neck on the line for his future? Because if they keep losing games, they're firing Hugh Jackson. So what do you expect them to do? Sit idly by and lose all these games and finish 3-12-1 and ride off into the sunset, and the only job you can get is as a quarterback coach the rest of your career? I mean, to me, I think Hugh Jackson has every right in the world to do what he wants.
Great stuff, Peter. This is so much fun. Thanks for the call. We'll chat again soon.
No problem, Rich. I'll see you.
You got it. That's Peter King.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.